Thank you once again, everyone, for joining us. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It'd be nice to know where you're joining us from. I am currently in Abuja, and at least I know that the Agagu family is joining us from Lagos, which happens to be the city I was born. It's such a fantastic city, by the way. And I suppose His Excellency is joining us from Sierra Leone.
Yes, indeed.
That is exciting. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, welcome. We're now going to let people in. And in the next 2 minutes, we're going to have more people join us.
My name is Joshua. I am a graduate of Agagu University. I studied biochemistry and I graduated with the first class honor in biochemistry. I want to sincerely thank the family of late Dr. Olusegun Agagu for this privilege he has given me to actualize my dream. Because I remember one of his words is to say that we should make a hay when the sun shines, because it will be too late to cry when the head is off. This has been a statement as a father figure. It's not even a father figure alone, but it's a legend that everybody should emulate, because he laid down a legacy for us to follow. And I look up to him as my role model, because his impact in the society, even in the country at large, has been tremendous and wonderful. And I'm happy to be a beneficiary of this great award he has given me. Because through his scholarship, I enjoy up to about 4 to 5 million naira in Agagu University, studying free of charge.
Hey everyone, my name is Ernest Bai Koroma, a graduate of Agagu University from the Department of Public Health of Olusegun Agagu Foundation Scholarship since September 2018 to July 2022.
And I'm a student of Agagu University High School. I got to Agagu University High School through the help of Olusegun Agagu Foundation Scholarship Fund. Without this fund, I don't know where I would be today, because they really helped me by going to Agagu University High School. My stay there has given me the opportunity to be able to compete with other students and to know my capability and now I am academically, physically, and spiritually sound as a result of this Olusegun Agagu Foundation Scholarship Fund. I pray the Lord will continue to bless Olusegun Agagu Foundation and their family and their loved ones. Thank you. I say thank you to Olusegun Agagu Foundation.
Good day, everyone. My name is Olusegun Rachel, and I finished from Agagu University last month, July 2022. I studied nursing, and I came out with credits in nursing science. And I want to bless the name of the Lord for His grace, for everything. And I'm so grateful for this foundation.
I would like to thank the foundation for contributing their own parts to my academics. Their contribution also helped me. It helped a lot. Thank you, sir.
I thank the Agagu Foundation.
Thank you, Olusegun Agagu Foundation. Thank you, Olusegun Agagu Foundation.
I thank Agagu Foundation.
I give thanks to Olusegun Agagu Foundation for everything.
Èmi ni Akínmọ̀sí Bámitálẹ̀. Mo dúpẹ́ ní ọwọ́ Ọlọ́run àti ẹ̀yin náà tẹ́ ran àwọn ọmọ wa lọ́wọ́. Ìrànlọ́wọ́ tẹ́ ṣe fún àwọn ọmọ wa yìí. Bí ẹ ṣe gbé ìrànlọ́wọ́ yẹn dìde, Ọlọ́run á ran àwọn ọmọ yín lọ́wọ́ o. Àánú Ọlọ́run ò ní fi yín sílẹ̀ o. Ọlọ́run á wà pẹ̀lú yín o. Nínú ìrìn àjò yín láyé, Jésù á dì yín mú dópin o. Ẹ ṣé o.
Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. I want to officially welcome the 9th Annual Memorial Lecture of the Olusegun Agagu Foundation. It is so good to be here. Just some housekeeping. Everyone seems to be muted already, but I just want to say that if your microphone on mute, we encourage you to also turn on your video, provided your internet connectivity permits. Otherwise, feel free to also turn off your video unless you are speaking. I will just briefly do some introductions, of course, discussing why we are here, which is to honor the legacy of the late Chief Olusegun Agagu, whose ideal and foundation immortalizes the late patriarch of the Agagu family. He's someone who has worked passionately to achieve governance and national development. There's so much that we can say about Chief Olusegun Agagu, and he is the reason that we are gathered here today. Leadership and geopolitical shifts. This lecture is going to explore quality leadership, the current unstable global climate. We're going to focus on position for increased influence on the global stage. I'm very delighted to be here. I'm very excited to learn more about and also to find out the many ways that we can continue to support the vision of the late Chief Olusegun Agagu. Support. I will, throughout the course of this event, continue to emphasize the need to support the OAF Foundation and the Agagu family, so that we leave here at the end of today, not just as participants in the lecture, but also as investors in what. So allow me to introduce myself. My name is Evelyn Dan Epele. I am and catalyst at Baobab Consulting. I'm very excited to be back here back at the Memorial Lecture. And I want to thank specifically the Agagu family for my colleagues and partners, Baobab Consulting, for working as possible. Baobab Consulting is now in its 5th year supporting the Memorial Lecture, and CEO Liz Grossman-Kitoi is here. Thank you so much. She invited me to my very first OAF Memorial Lecture in September 2020 me beyond my original intention for even being there. And I was compelled to return in 2020 of the organizing committee with Baobab Consulting. And it's so much of a delight to be back here this year, also as your MC. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Welcome. We have guests from all over. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box, where in the world you are joining us from. Without further ado, I welcome the Executive Secretary of the Board of the Olusegun Agagu Foundation, Mr. Feyi Agagu, who will kickstart the lecture with a brief presentation about the foundation, and of course, to go into details as to why we're here.
Good afternoon, everybody. So, Evelyn, can I wait for the presentation? Welcome you again this year to our regular lecture series by the Olusegun Agagu Foundation. We've been going 9 years strong, thank God. We're hoping to go for a lot longer. Quickly, we'll go through the presentation. It won't take too much of our time. When my dad, the late Dr. Olusegun Agagu, passed away 9 years ago, we set up a foundation in his name in 2014 called the Olusegun Agagu Foundation. Next slide, please. And with this foundation, we chose to immortalize his name and his legacy to, of course, showcase further follow through the ideals by which he had lived by, and focus on at least critical areas that we thought were pertinent to what it is that he was doing. Of course, he was a politician, so his position in service and addressing what it is as the needs of his beloved state, Ondo State government and Nigeria. He was also a minister who touched the power sector and the aviation, and of course, service to family, friends, and in general, mankind. Since then, we were able to set up this foundation with this board of trustees. Dr. Deji Adeleke has been our chairman. We also have Chief Pius Akinyelure, Mrs. Ekpere, Prince Adefulu, Alhaji Kashim Imam, Ms. Adefala, Dr. Aliu, Uncle Femi, Mr. Femi Agagu, Mr. Akinyelure Ajoye, Mr. Falawo, and of course myself as a humble secretary. A couple of years ago, Professor Dele Fawole, a good family and friend, also stepped down from the board due to other reasons. The board has, next please. Our activities over the years, as I said, we've done about 8 memorial lectures now. This is the 9th. We've disbursed cash prizes and prizes to both at secondary school level to various students, mostly on those state indigents. We have tertiary institutions where we've endowed funds that have benefited at least over 30 beneficiaries thus far. We have full scholarships at the Adeleke University, 35 now. We'll add another 5 this year, going to about 40. We've also done into secondary schools, full scholarships, Premier College, Ijebu-Ode, Adeleke High Schools, to help citizens, again, on those state indigents for their secondary school education. This year, we did something different. We commissioned at the Olusegun Agagu University of Science and Technology e-library. 25 million was donated towards that event. And of course, we continued with our endowments at the 4 different universities that have touched Dr. Agagu one way or the other. His alma mater, University of Ibadan, Ondo State University of Science and Technology, Olusegun Agagu in this case, which was named after him, the Federal University of Technology, Akure, and of course, Adekunle Adeyasin University. We've also done this lecture series every year to showcase good governance. So we try and identify various persons that one way or the other have impacted their community or their country by selling or promoting good ideals, which is one of the things my father was out for. We have quite an illustrious alumni. 2014, of course, We had His Excellency Festus Mogae. 2015, we had Eden Kojo. 2016, we had His Excellency Benjamin Nkapa. 2017, Joaquin Chisano. Sorry, next pages, please. 2018, we started with the women, so of course to create diversity. Then Josephine Banda joined us in 2018. Amina Farid Goreb, 2019. And of course, 2020, Rosalia Ortega Sereno. Last year, we had something on entrepreneurship, and we had a great panel as well. And this year, we'll come with another former president, His Excellency Ernest Bai Koroma, and a fantastic cast. Thank you very much for joining us, His Excellency. We also have Professor Rama here as well. Thank you very much, Prof. And I'm sure strong panelists to herald this year's 9th anniversary. Next year is the big one, 10th year anniversary. We're hoping to go back from virtual to physical. So it should be more exciting. We'll plan big things, and we have a lot of activities planned for that. We also have a couple of other things we're hoping to achieve this year. From the screen. Of course, increase endowments at the various universities, increase the number of students that are receiving scholarships, or extend the number of universities that we currently endow. So those are some of the things that we'd like to do in the coming years. We've also started an autobiography of Dr. Agagu. We're also hoping to launch next year at the 10th anniversary, and a host of other things we are hoping will be special next year and moving forward. Of course, in order to do all this, we need your help and assistance. Thank you very much for all those that have been sending in donations. Our account has been singing and shouting for the past 1 week, and we're indeed very grateful. However, we do encourage you to please help us some more so that we can meet some of these initiatives. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was Mr. Feyi Agagu. I completely agree with you. Support for the foundation is very important. And like I said, I'll encourage us all to not just participate in the annual lecture this year, but also contribute and invest in this vision. So thank you so much. I would want us to observe a moment of silence in honor of the late Olusegun Agagu. So please, I'm just going to ask that can we all just observe 1 minute silence? The time is 4:15 p.m. Thank you. And thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. And may the soul of the late Chief Olusegun Agagu continue to rest in the bosom of the Lord, of course, in perfect peace. Amen. Thanks, everyone, once again. I would like to quickly introduce our keynote speaker for today, His Excellency Ernest Bai Koroma. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for joining us here today. It's so nice to have you. I don't know if you can hear me, but it's so nice to have you here. Your Excellency is the former president of Sierra Leone, who was democratically elected.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. for 2 terms between the years 2007 to 2018. Of course, he's very well known for his impact in the Republic of Sierra Leone, implementing very far-reaching democratic reforms, which resulted in the remarkable transformation of Sierra Leone. It's so nice to have you here today. I must say that we are honored. Your time and of course your presence is very important to us, and we hope we'll elevate our thinking as we look forward to the consolidation of peace, massive reforms, of course, not just on the continent, but even in the world. So thank you so much for joining us here today. I would also briefly introduce our special guest speaker in person of Dr. Benedict Koroma. I'm sure you can, are you here, Professor? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, nice. I just wanted to acknowledge that you're here and quickly invite His Excellency, who will deliver his keynote speech to us today. So Your Excellency, you have the floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Madam Coordinator, for the introductory remarks you have made about me. And I'm very pleased to be here. The Olusegun Agagu family, the Board of Trustees, and members of the foundation, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It was Shakespeare who said that when beggars die, there are no comments seen. But even the heavens themselves blaze forth the death of princes. He was right, but what he didn't say is that even after their passing, the memories of great leaders blossom for prosperity, because while in service, they sow a seed in the lives of those they serve. Dr. Olusegun Agagu was an academic, a visionary political reformer, a family man whose devotion to duty was characterized by selflessness. He left a lucrative job in the oil industry for a post in the university that paid him half of what he earned as a geologist in his previous employment. This is possible for one reason only. From the onset, he wanted to serve humanity, to mold young minds and prepare them and himself for development challenges ahead of the nation. This is the very essence of leadership, to have a vision, to help others to do well, so that society could positively be impacted more widely and more meaningfully. Someone once said that being a leader is no easy task. It takes hard work, courage, and risk-taking. Being able to find solutions, solve problems, and make things better are vital components to effective leadership. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, I am immensely proud to be associated with this memorial endeavor to honor Dr. Olusegun Agagu, former governor of Ondo State, for his outstanding leadership and dedication to service. Such outstanding leadership is so badly needed at a time like this, when geopolitical shifts are creating uncertainties and opportunities, depending on how particularly leaders appreciate and respond to those dynamics. The literature indicates that we are witnessing the maturing of a new superpower, China. And while Russia is becoming more and more assertive, a number of middle powers from across the globe, India, South Africa, Indonesia, and Brazil, are emerging. The transition from a unipolar world dominated by the US since the end of the Cold War to a new multipolar order incorporating China brings with a whole range of uncertainties. China is no doubt behind the US in its capabilities as a major power, but is certainly the leading emerging or developing power. The ramifications are all too clear. The institutions, rules, and norms of global governance that evolved in the post-war era are in crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic has amplified declining international trust and pessimism about the prospects for international cooperation. The crisis occurred at a time when China's rise is at full throttle, assertive and seeking a greater leading role in globalization and multilateralism. At the same time, the United States appeared, at least in the Trump era, to have abandoned its leadership in important areas of international cooperation, including the World Trade System, action against climate change, and cooperation on public health. For instance, at the peak of the health crisis, the United States signaled its intention to withdraw from the World Health Organization. And both China and the US engaged in a war of words. The global public health crisis brings into sharp focus not only the importance of the social and political determinants of public health with wildly different public health outcomes evident between differently governed states, but also the importance of geopolitical threats to international cooperation in the face of an international crisis. Away from the global health crisis, China has demonstrated aspirations for a leading role in multilateral institutions, from the United Nations peacekeeping to the World Trade Organization, and in regional initiatives such as the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. China has also been the architect of a number of new international initiatives and multilateral institutions that may provide a clear indication of its goals. The ramifications of Brexit on the UK-EU economic power and the assertiveness of Russia and how the war in Ukraine appeared to have open-ended the global economy and supply chain are clear pointers to a shift in global political and economic influence. The US is currently striving to reassert America's influence, but the damage has already been done, with China and Russia jealously guiding around gains that Trump's America abdicated. In view of short increasing China and Russian influence and assertiveness, a critical question arises as to how China will act as a major power in a future uncertain global order. This necessitates a rethinking on how the global community should be governed. One of the important lessons which could be drawn from this is that well-managed nations also hold the levers of power for enforcing measures to protect health as well as to stave off economic collapse. This is also true for Africa. Despite being the least developed region in the world, the global geopolitical shifts present Africa an opportunity to supercharge its economic and social transformation, as well as enhance its resilience through diversifying its partnership. Who would ever imagine that Europe will seek trade relations with Nigeria for gas? Several other opportunities exist in agriculture, for instance, which Africa could capitalize to grow its economy and develop our nations. Simply put, Africa has options, but it must choose wisely. It is easy to complain and tear down what exists. The leadership challenge of the day will be defining and then realizing a new international order for global cooperation and governance. Moreover, the digital age is now getting comfortable, changing the way we engage with each other, our governments. We must safeguard this space to protect people's privacy, their livelihoods, and their welfare. Societies must ensure that we equip people to identify and handle misinformation, that is, inaccurate representation or interpretation of information, and disinformation, the purposeful manipulation of facts, and even use of fictitious materials to change opinions and/or behavior. This is especially important during political moments such as elections. Interdependence is critical, but a balance between security and interdependence is emerging. It is an important moment to recalibrate how we define the key concepts as sovereignty, security, and resilience. There are short-term and long-term risks and challenges that we are aware of. Climate change is an example. Another emerging example is energy. Already, the prognosis is not that gloomy. Democracy is coming of age in Africa. Yes, there are some reverses, particularly in West Africa, resulting in the resurgence and commendable responses within the region and across Africa that the era of dictatorship and military rule is over. Also, there are fewer conflicts now on the continent than ever in modern post-independence African history. We have an increasingly younger, educated, dynamic, and expectant population, ambitious and keen to engage. And while we are witnessing the generational shift from the last of the independence leaders and the emergence of leaders who were born in a free Africa, Africa is increasingly becoming urban. The prospects abound and could be seen in the diversification of Africa's partnerships with the rest of the world, the proliferation of African summits. Today we hear about the Indian African Summit, the Japan African Summit, Brazil African Summit, Russian African Summit, and of course, China's growing influence in Africa with all of its positive and negative impacts. These are clear signals that indicates that there is a geopolitical shift, and Africa stands to gain when the right decisions with the proper leadership are engaged. To successfully navigate through these new realities and harness the opportunities required, the right sense of leadership. Intellectuals like to argue about leadership. It is a set of competencies, or it is an effect. Is it true that one can develop many of the competencies we look for in our leaders? Oratory, strategic thinking, negotiations and communication skills, management skills, etc. However, if those skills are not put to positive outcomes for the people, then can this truly be referred to as a good leadership? In other words, leadership is not about popularity. It is about conviction, resilience, and hard work. It is no longer about power, about grand speeches and sound bites, but more so, it is about delivery and transformation. This is because as individuals become more and more empowered, they expect more and more from their leaders. Therefore, the role of leadership in navigating change, either resisting or embracing, requires the mobilization of resources and the people for positive impact. And make no mistakes, transformation is hard, but what is important for the leader to bear in mind is that there are always winners and there will always be losers. For the change to be positive, the winnings should be maximized and shared out as widely as possible. The impact on the losers should be minimized, and some of the winnings should be set aside to support the losers to find a decent and dignified livelihoods in the new reality. So yes, it is valid for people to look up to politics for leadership, and we must continue to do so, but also recognize that politics has always been about negotiations, compromise, and innovation. Leadership is needed, to remind us that our communities are made up of diverse range of stakeholders and common but differentiated values and means, but that it takes all of us for any of us to succeed. Looking ahead, Africa, the continent, its countries, and its people are guided by a set of principles and aspirations that have been recorded in national visions and the Agenda 2063. They are also guided by election manifestos. The task at hand is for the leaders of today and tomorrow to build on the work from the leaders of yesterday and to navigate the tumultuous shifts taking place to deliver on the aspirations set out by the people behind them. But this requires that current leaders, as they are, should have one purpose in mind. That is, they should recognize that they are there, not for themselves, but for others. This is what we have seen in Dr. Olusegun Agagu. I thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Your Excellency. That is a very powerful statement that you made there, that leaders must recognize that we are not here just for ourselves, but also for others. And I'm so delighted as to how that easily comes alive when we think about the impact that the life of the late Chief Dr. Olusegun Agagu has made. Even in his now absence, he is still present through his works and through the impact that the foundation has made. I'm also very thankful to you for sharing, of course, key insights as to what drives African geopolitics in particular. You spoke on the widespread democratic elections from country to country that has, of course, caused a paradigm shift here on the continent and how that shift can even be mitigated. I also love the points you made about fast-growing economies and the dynamic of digital change, of course, how we have to heighten security in terms of digital infrastructure. You also spoke about the need for young people to rise up to the occasion. And this is a very important stakeholder group. Of course, we know that the youth population in Africa will continue to grow over the years. I want to thank you so much. There's so much that I personally can pull out from your speech, and I'm sure I'm going to be tweeting all day today with all those really powerful quotes from you. Thank you so much, Your Excellency, for your time. We are very, very honored to have you here to share your intelligence with us. This means so much to us, and I'm sure that speaking on behalf of the family, we're just so delighted. I see everyone giving a round of applause in the background. We're pressed for time. What I'm going to do is to invite a special guest speaker, Professor Orama. Before I do that, I just want to quickly introduce Professor Orama, who is, of course, well known here in Nigeria. He assumed the position of President and Chairman of the Board of Directors at the Africa Export-Import Bank, known as Afrexim Bank, in 2015. And Professor Orama, of course, is known for his impact in business development and corporate banking. He has such a credible track record in leading different business development initiatives and business development departments in number of banks too numerous to mention and units. Professor Orama, I am so delighted to share space and time with you. Thank you so much for your presence, for being here today. You have the floor now.
Thank you very much, moderator. Let me begin by also thanking His Excellency President Bai Koroma, our dear brother from Sierra Leone, for a very insightful speech. It's good to see you again, sir. Let me also thank the family of the late Dr. Agagu, as well as the foundation led by dear brother and friend, Dr. Adeleke, for this opportunity. I'm very humbled to stand on a platform on which, in the recent past, had welcomed some of Africa's illustrious men and women. This podium, even if virtual today, has welcomed His Excellency Festus Mogae, former President of Botswana, former President Nkapa of Tanzania, former President Joyce Banda of Malawi, also Professor Oye Ibidapo Obe, the former Vice Chancellor of the University of Lagos, among others. Continuing the same tradition, His Excellency Ernest Bai Koroma, former President of Sierra Leone, just delivered an insightful keynote address this afternoon. The bar of excellence is certainly high, and therein lies the enormous burden upon me. I'm nonetheless most privileged and honored by the opportunity to participate in the memorial of one of Nigeria's and indeed Africa's distinguished personalities. A man who evidently left indelible footprints on the sands of times. A leader I met several times as he served Nigeria selflessly and whom I had great respect for. The late Dr. Agagu was a dear friend of my former boss, the former president of our Flexing Bank, Mr. Christopher Edodu. I accompanied Mr. Edodu to meet him on a number of occasions, especially while he was a minister. Each time, he encouraged me to serve with dedication as a path to an enduring and impactful career. As president of our Flexing Bank, many years after, I stand as evidence of his fulfilled prophecy of the value of following disciplined guidance. I would like to commend the Agagu Foundation and the family for immortalizing the distinguished Dr. Agagu and keeping the flame of his legacy alive. The life of the late Dr. Agagu is one that presents useful lessons to all of us, irrespective of age. He epitomized the essence of public service, commitment to excellence, community development, and better lives for ordinary people. His achievements were innumerable and very well known. As a governor, he championed people-oriented development programs. Bishop of the Diocese on the Coast, Bishop Ebun Ogunele, described it best in his speech on the occasion of the second anniversary of the death of Dr. Agagu, when he said, and I quote, "The Olusegun I knew was not a Nigerian politician who worked to win election in order to make name for himself, but to wipe tears away from the eyes of those that were bruised by our economy. When Agagu managed the affairs of Ondo State, he established general hospitals in all the local government headquarters. He also established health centers, maternities in all wards, and ensured that they were equipped with drugs and haircare workers. He built at least a block of 6 classrooms in every primary school, even in the remotest village, constructed bridges, and even built roads that led to the adjoining Atlantic Ocean. The late Agagu's commitment to delivering prosperity to the citizens, even in the face of adversity, is a mark of an inspiring, true, selfless, and bold leadership that are ironically in limited supply in today's challenging world. Your Excellency, your choice of theme for this year's commemoration, leadership and geopolitical shifts, the role of transformational finance, is most opportune and timely. Over the last 3 to 4 decades, we have witnessed observable tectonic shifts in economic, trade, and military powers. The drivers of these shifts and changes are disparate and somehow related. The collapse of the Soviet Union in the 1980s spurred the rise of globalization and made the Treaty of Fez that established the WTO easier to conclude. China then rose, largely because although WTO induced multilateralism and globalization, freed the movement of goods and capital, it restricted the movement of people. The consequence was that abundant capital in developed Western economies flowed freely to labor-abundant China to produce goods that were then shipped back to the Western markets. Over time, labor-intensive manufacturing migrated to China and deindustrialized major manufacturing hubs in the West, such as the US Midwest. While these developments contained inflation in the West, they also led to a significant accumulation of capital in China, enabling China to become a significant global exporter of capital goods, a space once dominated by Western powers. Little wonder that China has risen from being the 12th largest trading economy in the world in 1990, with just $62 billion in merchandise exports, to becoming #1 with merchandise exports amounting to over $3 trillion today. The size of the economy was only $360 billion US dollars in 1990, but it is today the second largest in the world at $17.5 trillion. China's sustained rise and strong demand for commodities also supported capital accumulation in a number of commodity-producing countries, including major oil and gas producers. These new capital-rich countries, especially in the Middle East and Asia, have also carved niches of regional influence. The narrative recounted above reminds us of the power of capital in determining global influence and even military power. That is why the key to unlocking Africa's growth and development potential lies in the extent to which it is able to unlock access to finance. For some of these countries, underpinning their rise to the echelons of global power has been a bold leadership determined to chart a certain course, to the extent that it assures self-reliance and brings economic prosperity to their people. I reckon that it is the same conviction that guided the late Dr. Agagu. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, equally important to the rise of these new powers, as I said earlier, is a deliberate effort to build a strong and locally controlled financial might that can support domestic economic transactions. A common denominator to the rise of these major developing countries is the establishment of financial institutions that acted as the building blocks for the pursuit of strategic domestic investments, as well as a tool for the pursuit of international political, trade, and economic engagements. At the outset of its journey, the Chinese government created the China Development Bank, the China Export Credit and Insurance Corporation called Sinosure, and China Export-Import Bank as vehicles to propel the country's transformation. The latter, China Exim Bank, was particularly tasked with the ultimate responsibility of implementing the Chinese government's going global policy. Consequently, nearly 3 decades after the establishment of China Exim in 1994, and also the other accompanying state institutions, these institutions have become the largest development finance providers globally. Korean economic miracle since the early 1970s was also a result of the creation of national trade and development finance institutions, including the Korea Development Bank in 1954, the Industrial Development Bank in 1961, and Korea Exim Bank in 1976. And later, the Korea Trade Insurance Corporation in 1992. Similar experiences were also observed in India, Singapore, and elsewhere between the 1970s and the 1990s. Another essential element is the control of the local banking sector by the nationals of the country pursuing development. This is a key success factor to ensuring that the domestic banking system worked to support locals. A cursory review will confirm to any observer that the domestic banking system of any country that has become successful economically is controlled by the nationals of that country. Today in China, foreign banks account for only 2% of the banking industry assets. In India, the foreign banks control only 4% of the banking sector assets. Even in Africa, Nigeria and Egypt are shining examples of what is possible when nationals control the banking sector. In this world, if you look around, you will see that the Chinese control Chinese banks, Americans control American banks, Europeans control European banks, Indians control Indian banks. It's only in Africa that foreigners control African banks. The levels of entrepreneurship in these economies, where the nationals control the banking system, are well ahead of what exists elsewhere in the world. And in Africa, we can also say the same. Because across the continent, where the banking sector is foreign dominated, we've seen only the control of the economy by others rather than the nationals of that country. Indeed, history shows that all major powers accumulated their capital in one way or another. It is no secret that slave trade and colonialism created significant wealth and capital for those who practiced them years ago. China used their banks to finance their development because, as they used to say, they didn't have anybody to plunder. It is no wonder that even as early as 1990, domestic credit to the private sector in China reached 85%, far ahead of some major economies. 2 to 3 decades afterwards, China's banking sector recorded only 6% non-performing loans, a small fee to pay, as the Chinese will say, to themselves for the huge economic leap they made over the same period. The rise of new powers and the unavoidable geopolitical shifts have not been without stresses. We have of recent seen strong opposition to globalization. Consequently, today's world has become even more fractured and and perilous than ever before. Trade wars and threats of sanctions have been elevated during the last 2 decades. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the changing economic and military power dynamics explain the persistence of conflicts and threats of military wars. We anticipate an intensification of the geopolitical and economic power struggle into the foreseeable future. Such a phenomenon, well documented in political economy literature, is commonly known as the Thucydides trap, an apparent tendency towards war when an emerging power threatens to displace an existing great power as a regional or international hegemon. What then do all these mean for our continent, Africa? Historically, Africa has had to contend with geopolitical forces that threw up hard choices. Such choices have regularly created divisions among political actors and policymakers in the continent. But Africa now needs a unified front if it is to create its own hegemon. And this must happen very quickly. We must pursue an agenda that is not dependent on aid, grants, and the benevolence of others. We must realize that unreserved political will, we must find unreserved political will to forge ahead together in the battle for economic freedom. That political will must be strong, and the actors must be determined to fight and struggle through the challenges that will be before them. We must build on the political will to harness all the resources required to deliver on the continental promise. Implementation of the continental agenda requires certain institutional constructs, as well as mammoth investments in strategic areas that can support the emergence of local industries. Africa's financial system is not large enough to lead the desired economic transformation. It is thus little surprise that Africa's economic promise has hardly taken off. In China, the China Exim Bank and China Development Bank together account for 23% of the country's GDP. In Korea, the Korean Exim Bank and the Korean Development Bank represent 19% of the national economy. And in Brazil, the Development Bank alone accounts for 10% of the Brazil GDP. However, Africa's 5 development finance institutions, namely African Development Bank, Afrexim Bank, Trade Development Bank, Africa Finance Corporation, Africa 50, account for a combined share of a paltry 3.5% of the continent's economy. In many countries, there are only a few or no locally owned banks to fuel the emergence of local entrepreneurs. The continent therefore risks losing out on the promise of an industrial revolution that has eluded it for several decades if African governments do not take urgent and bold strategic and decisive moves. Africa must create a financial system that responds to the present economic challenges and oil the wheels of long-term economic transformation. Leveraging the experience of other maturing economies such as China, Korea, India, and others, Africa must ensure that it has absolute control of its financial system to lead a desired transformation. The time is in fact ripe for this move, as foreign banks are themselves divesting from Africa. We must ensure that it is Africans that buy them and not others. Afrexim Bank has to date provided billions of dollars to support African banks or investors to acquire some of these banks. A significant amount is also in the pipeline. We are also supporting African banks with the capital to go global. Mark Twain, an African writer in the late an American writer in the late 1800s wrote, and I quote, "It is not the size of a dog that wins a fight, but the size of the fight in the dog." We at Afrexim Bank share that view. We can't afford to let our size determine our potential. We will not be constrained by our size in helping African leaders to deliver on their continental aspirations. That's why Afrexim Bank is central in implementing the continental agenda, the AFCFTA. If well implemented, which we hope to do, the AFCFTA will create a continent that is both politically and economically independent, an African economy that will become most relevant in the discourse of global affairs. In that regard, Afrexim Bank has provided resources and instruments that we believe will champion intra-African trade. Providing resources that have led to the creation of the Pan-African payment and settlement system that will integrate our fragmented and fractured payment system on the continent. Providing resources to build infrastructural facilities across the continent. Supporting the implementation of the adjustment facility that will make African Continental Free Trade Agreement to be successfully implemented. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, with all these in place, Africa will be able to begin to build the capital it needs. We must always remember that it is capital, capital, and capital that will make the change for our people. There's no other thing. Every struggle in this world you see is a struggle over capital. The problem we have in the continent is that we always overlook or even pretend that we do not know. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, before I close, let me once again thank the Board of Trustees of the Agagu Foundation, as well as the family of Agagu for this opportunity. Let me also thank His Excellency President Koroma for the insightful speech today, and thank all those who have been listening to me for your patience. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Orama. I really enjoyed your speech, particularly how you spoke about Africa's role as an exporter of capital goods. One word that sounds true and rings true for me is the reinforcement of the role of capital in the achievement of our vision, and how significant capital is in catalyzing change on the continent. You said specifically that the key lies in the extent to which Africa and we are able to unlock access to finance. And I think that that has just been my key takeaway here. And this is why I continue to re-emphasize that it's very important to commit to investing in the work that the Olusegun Agagu Foundation had been doing over the past years. I must tell you that the family is one that I admire. Personally, how they have fostered unity and rallied together in the absence of their dad and patriarch to continue to further his vision. That in itself is something worth emulating. So please, I want everyone to make that commitment today to support this foundation. And remember that when you support the foundation, you're not just directly supporting the family, but you're even supporting people who do not have the privilege to be here today, but will benefit significantly from your contribution. Thank you so much to our keynote speaker. Once again, thank you so much, Your Excellency. Thank you so much, Professor Orama. We're pressed for time, but I still want to be able to take at least one question. Your Excellency, if you don't mind, I just want to summarize the questions that our participants have been putting in the chat box. Before I do that, I think I should acknowledge everyone on the call today. We have such a global audience from different parts of the world. We see you. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us and for joining us. I also want to thank specifically those who have sent in well wishes in the chat box. I want you to know that we can see all of your messages and we appreciate you. I saw in particular Honorable Ola Oguntimehi. He said, congratulations to the Olusegun Agagu Foundation for the 9th Olusegun Agagu Memorial Lecture. This series remains a recurrent contributor to policy formation in Africa and beyond. We bless all past and present keynote speakers and panelists. I think that for me, that is a very good message that cuts across as to the significance of this lecture. Thank you so much, Honorable, for that comment, and thanks everyone. Your Excellency, back to your position on some of the geopolitical drivers in Africa. I want to highlight some of the democratic elections that have happened across the continent. We see in Angola, in Kenya, and in the Senegalese election, all in 2020. What will you say? And very quickly, what would you say is your advice? What advice do you have for the Nigerian electorate? We know that the Nigerian general election is coming up in February 2023. We have a number of people asking, what advice do you have for the Nigerian electorate during the 2023 general election?
Well, I indicated in my statement, Africa is becoming of age in terms of building and deepening our democracy. We have come a long way, but we are not yet there. There is still a need for us to continue to build our institutions for elections generally, and not specifically to Nigeria, but all other countries. We need to strengthen the electoral management bodies to ensure that they have the capacity to organize the elections, however diverse the country is, however huge the number of the electorate, to ensure that everybody is given an opportunity to exercise his or her civic responsibility to vote. It is only when people have an opportunity to vote, and at the end of the day, we allow every vote to count, we will say that the democratic process is growing. We don't have a final destination for democracy, because we all have seen, even in America, the past elections, how the issues transpired. So I think the electoral management bodies must have the capacity to conduct the elections, and also to those of us that are politicians. I think we have to be very clear with our messages. We must be very honest to ourselves, to ensuring that we say what we believe we will be able to do, and we don't make empty promises, because when you go out there and you don't commit yourself to what you say, you create a situation of difficulties, even at the time when you are governing. So these are all issues that I believe all of us should work on both sides. The people that are being governed, we must know that it is our responsibility. We have to go out there and ensure that we vote. For the electoral management bodies, they must ensure that every vote counts, and what comes out at the end of the day is a true reflection of the will of the people. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. That's a very well-rounded response. We must all participate. We must all be stakeholders and consider ourselves stakeholders in the job of achieving our vision. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. I'll now turn to Professor Orama. I have a question here from you. Just summarily from the contribution, when you speak towards Africa being able to unlock access to finance, we see the Pan-African Payments and Settlement System that's being operated by the Africa Export-Import Bank in collaboration with the African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement. The Secretariat is that innovation in itself is one of the very best ones in recent times to get Africa to currency convertibility. How would you say that we can all help scale capital in local currency, particularly for African countries and for MS? And that's for you.
I think I lost you for 1 minute.
Did you
scale up?
How do we scale capital, particularly in local currency? I was referring to the Pan-Africa Payments and Settlement System. I'm sure you're familiar with that, and you know how that has helped Africa, currency convertibility in Africa. How would you say that we can scale capital in local currency for African countries and for MSMEs?
Yeah, no, thank you very much. You know, the problem we have on the continent is that we have a continent of 42 currencies, fragmented payment systems. If you wanted to transfer money from Nigeria to Benin Republic, it has to go somewhere else and then come down. And it costs us $5 billion a year to do that. And we had to convert to another currency and then convert back to another currency. All these delays, sometimes up to 2 weeks, and then of course the cost. So what the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System does, it makes it possible to pay for intra-African trade in goods and services in the local currencies of Africa. So it domesticates the intra-African trade. Now, because you domesticate intra-African trade, your currency gets stabilized. And when your currency is stabilized, then you are likely to begin to see capital formation in your currency. It becomes easier for you for your savings to mean something. And then it becomes easier for access to financial the MSMEs, as you mentioned. Today, the way we are is that the fact that we have to always go through several currencies to do even trade amongst ourselves makes our currencies sometimes worthless. So what can you do with a worthless currency? You cannot buy anything. So you cannot invest with it. So getting the payment system, making it possible for us to domesticate that in traditional transactions, will make our currencies to become stronger. It makes it possible to become an instrument of investment. And that is what we're hoping to achieve as we scale up that intervention.
Thank you so much, Professor Koroma. Very brilliant wrap up there. We're so pressed for time, so I'd like us to move now quickly to the second half of this, which would be welcoming our panel speakers for the conversation that, you know, it forms the theme for why we're here today on leadership and geopolitical shifts. Our panelists will be speaking more to the role of food security and the impact on national security. Allow me to welcome my very senior colleague. It's very good to have you here, Ms. Teju Abisoye. Thank you so much for joining us. I will now, hand over the floor to you so that you can take it from here. Good evening and welcome. Ms. Teju, everyone.
Thank you very much, Evelyn. Good evening, everyone. My name is Teju Abisoye. I'm the current Executive Secretary of the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund. A big congratulations to the Agagu family, again, for keeping the legacy of their patriarch active. Very quickly, because of time today, permit me to introduce the panelists. Your Excellency, thank you for that speech. Dr. Koroma, again, for your time. I will introduce the panelists and go right into the conversation. First, no order of appearance, but let me introduce Professor Lateef Sani, who has over 27 years experience in research and consultancy. He has worked with several grant awarding institutions across the globe. Professor Sani is a former Deputy Vice Chancellor of the Federal University of Agriculture, Abeokuta, and a renowned professor of food science. He's also a fellow of the Nigerian Institute of Food Science and Technology and Institute of Management Consultants of Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Professor Lateef Sani.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us, sir. I would like to introduce, of course, Ms. Ndidi Onwuneli, who is an expert on social innovation, African agriculture and nutrition, entrepreneurship, and youth development. She has over 25 years of international development experience and is a recognized serial entrepreneur, author, public speaker, and consultant. Over the past 13 years, she has focused exclusively on transforming the African agriculture and nutrition landscape through her work as co-founder and managing partner of Sahel Consulting, Agriculture and Nutrition, co-founder of Ace Foods, and founder of Nourishing Africa. She serves on several boards, both locally and internationally. Welcome, Ms. Onwuneli.
Great to be here.
And finally, and not the least, please welcome with me, Mr. Akindele Phillips, a passionate entrepreneur known for his work, I think mostly with farm crowding, but he also co-founded Feel and Move. He's also the co-founder of Hall 247. He's the managing director today at Potter's World Consult, an African tax coordinator at Centurial Law Group, and an advisor at the Founders Factory Africa. He's committed to lifelong learning and value creation for the development of Africa. Welcome, Mr. Akindele.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I don't want to just very quickly jump into the conversation. We're really grateful for everybody for joining us on this conversation as we discuss leadership and geopolitical shifts. But I think in this case, we're going to be looking at it, especially from agriculture. And again, my bias, because of the work I currently do, youth employment, and making sure that we're securing the future for African youth. So I would quickly go through all the panelists and ask if everybody can quickly describe in their own mind what it means around leadership and how we can use to impact food security or the lack thereof in terms of security and food security and geopolitical shift. What does it mean across Africa to you today as in these conversations? Can I ask, Ms. Onwuneli, please, do you want to start?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this honor to join such a distinguished group of panelists. And again, congratulations to the family for putting this together. I'm a big believer in legacy and sustaining legacies through foundations, so I applaud your efforts. I think we're living in very, very interesting but also difficult times when we think about food security in Nigeria. Not only are we experiencing double-digit inflation with reference to food, but also the most basic commodities have become unaffordable for the average Nigerian. We're facing serious insecurity in our farmlands, and we're also dealing with multiple threats around the entire ecosystem with climate change, challenges accessing inputs with the Russia-Ukraine war. And I think the average Nigerian families prior to this were spending 57% of household income on food. And with the crisis, we're seeing a deepening of this entrenched poverty, which directly leads to malnutrition, which affects future generations. So I say all that to say is that right now we're facing a serious and urgent call for leadership, effective leadership at all levels when it comes to addressing food insecurity. From the political lens, we need a cohesive and coordinated approach to addressing food insecurity. Historically, in Nigeria, we've worked in silos when it comes to the food ecosystem. We've let that be the purview of the Ministry of Agriculture, but clearly it's not the purview of the Ministry of Agriculture. Food security affects the Ministry of Finance. They have a critical role to play. The Central Bank of Nigeria, the Ministry of Trade and Investment, Transport, Infrastructure, Climate Change, Women Affairs, Youth Development, etc. And so when we're solving this problem, it requires a cohesive ecosystem approach where everybody leaves their egos and logos at the door and says, what is my part in addressing this food challenge? Beyond cohesive policy environment, and we've done a lot around policy in this area as we develop the Vision 2050 and 2030, but what we are continuing to see is individualistic approach to actually putting out the resources required, and investing in the right infrastructure and the priority value chains that we all need to work on. And I'll give you an example. Nigeria cannot be #1 in every value chain. And our governments need to prioritize. I'm so happy to see Professor Sani here, who is a leader in the global cassava industry. Cassava is one of our core competencies and comparative advantages. And yet, when I see what we do, I think we pay lip service to the cassava industry, and I'm sure Professor Sani will talk about that. Beyond that, we need the private sector really investing in food and agriculture, because food is life, food is medicine, and all of us realize that unhealthy diets on one hand lead to diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and we have rising rates of all of that in this country. So what's the role of the private sector? Investing in infrastructure because it makes business sense. Investing in financing, as Professor Rama has said, because you can make money in food. Investing in all aspects of the ecosystem from farm to fork, and also ensuring that we don't have gouging, we don't have unfair competition, that in this time of shortage, our anti-competition laws work for everybody. So we put the needs of our consumers ahead of every need. The development sectors have a role to play, and I could go on and on. So for me, Teju, this is a call to action and a call to collaboration and a call to practical solutions and scaling innovation across the board and advancing collaboration and cooperation. And I hope to see more of this. And as the panel goes along, I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to give some very practical ideas and advice for what we can do together collaboratively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that. Professor Sani, do you want to go ahead, please? You're mute, sir.
I thank the family for this opportunity, and I want to thank His Excellency. I've been to Sierra Leone, and I've worked in Sierra Leone. I was in Makeni, I was in Bo during your reign when we were pushing the food sufficiency in Sierra Leone. So you have definitely demonstrated it today that you know what you are doing, sir. Thank you very much, His Excellency. Now, back to the issue of food security. When you are talking of affordability, accessibility, and in terms of the issue of productivity of food, we are in serious problem in Nigeria. And it's not that we have not done it before. The geopolitical shift, actually we had our strength when we have the cocoa bat in the south, palm oil produce in the east, and the granite pyramid in the north. And the proceed from the cocoa bat was what gave the Western up the educational power today that people are trying to destroy. So Nigeria is not that we do not have it. We have good leadership in Awolowo in those days. Where are those leaders today? That's the issue we need to begin to search. Where are those leaders? When His Excellency Governor Agagu was the governor, I was in Ondo State as a post-harvest scientist in IIT. We were establishing and training people in Ondo State. So immediately he left, everything went off. So our problem is inconsistency in sustaining the best practices, and is brought down to selfishness of individuals. People do not want Agagu's legacy to continue. I will start my own. That's what is killing Nigeria. It's not that we do not have leaders. We have some people that have done it. President Obasanjo, the last point. In 2004 and 2008, we ran presidential initiatives in this country. Fish for All initiative, fertilizer initiative, then cassava initiative. We started the issue of cassava. And he said, let us imbibe 10% inclusion to replace wheat. And the wheat mafia killed the initiative. When Dr. Kemi Adesina came 2009 and 2014, we push again. Then we say, okay, the flour mill, only where they said they were producing 20% of cassava for cassava bread. Immediately it left in 2015. They killed it again.
Now we have a minister that was just talking anything and left. Now we have another minister that we are trying to walk the talk. Then Ukraine-Russia crisis came in. 25% of our wheat cannot come to this country. Now the master bakers have increased bread to 1,000 naira per loaf. In a country when you can use cassava bread to replace wheat, you can use sorghum to replace wheat. I am not sure that we are not cursed as a nation.
Sorry,
so,
thank you.
As far as I'm concerned, in terms of stabilizing the food security of this country, we have it in Nigeria, and we have demonstrated it. The only thing is that for us to pray that we have people that will listen to us and let us do it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you very much, Prof. I think, like His Excellency had said earlier, leadership is about grit, it's a lot of courage, and it's about delivery and transformation. Mr. Phillips, please go ahead for your contribution.
Thank you so much, Teju, and a big thank you for having me here. Congratulations to the family of the Agagu. Thank you for keeping the legacy. Good evening, His Excellency, President Koroma, and good to see you again, Professor Koroma. Thank you. I'm just going to write in on what BCD had mentioned, and Professor Sonny, they've broken it down on the macro level and brought it home. So I'll just be emphasizing a few things. One of those is that the population growth rate of population growth is huge. Nigeria, there's been a lot of estimates as to what the population would be, whether on the continent or globally, and in the next couple of years is drawing closer than we can imagine. We also have the fact that even on the farmlands, there's an aging population. So the majority of those directly involved in these agricultural activities are aging. Agriculture has not been exciting for this current generation. So more work needs to be done on the leadership side of things. I would say the word is collaboration, ensuring that all the stakeholders involved to ensure that we work towards the security of food, to work together as a team, whether the DFIs, the private sector, or the government, different institutions within the government sector, right? And once we have leaders that can also identify, like Ms. Didi said, specific value chains that we have comparative advantage on as a nation or as a continent, let's put the efforts together and grow that. And like Professor Sonny also mentioned, in terms of the cocoa back in the days, and there's few more value chains that over time have now developed, and we are developing and we're producing in volumes that we can actually export out of the continent.
Please, can you mute your mic? Mr. Femi Agagu, thank you very much. Go ahead, Mr. Femi.
Thank you. So there are a few value chains that we can focus on and drive the growth of this production. I think lastly is, interestingly, there are few opportunities across different nodes of the food value chain, right? So it's not limited to just co-production. Post-harvest activities, right? You can create enterprises around them, right? Cold chain and all of that. So we need to draw the attention of Nigerians to the different opportunities along the food value chain. And that's really is what the leader needs to do. Collaborative effort, let people know the opportunity, and let's try. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. I'll stay with you on that because exactly as Ndidi said earlier, investing, letting the private sector know what to invest. And then you mentioned post-harvest on the value chain. How do we reduce post-harvest losses so that we can, first of all, improve the earnings for even the farmers, make sure that, and then thereby also see how we can reduce the cost of the food as we see the inflation numbers, the cost of food in Nigeria going up. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'll quickly just share 2 points around those. First, the farmers usually sell to intermediary middlemen who pay the farmers at the farm gate peanuts and then send to the next, to the next, to the next. And then the last guy in the city makes much more, right? Introducing a system that allows the farmer be able to get more value for the effort is put in producing those goods will help encourage the farmer. We actually even help the youth that works with this aging farmer group in producing more. 2 is also introduce, and that's going to be an effort of, it's not only the private sector, introducing systems that allow, for instance, items of the food value chain that have short shelf lives to stay beyond the number of few days and not get exposed to spoilage. Would also help. Cold rooms are example, and there are a lot of things. We have good sunlight. You can have solar paneled or controlled or managed cold rooms and different, and all of, yes, that's where the private sector can actually play, introducing innovative ways to extend the shelf life of some of these produce that have a very short life normally.
Thank you very much. And I think this brings us back to the conversation on capital. And Ms. Onleli, can I come back to you and speak, if you can, how can we unlock the key challenges of financing for agriculture? Even based on the work we do, we see that's the portfolio that does the worst, agriculture. But I would like to hear your thoughts on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know, the first thing is that we have to change our mindset again. I would prefer that we don't call it agriculture, we call it the food ecosystem, because you can make money selling food, right? And where should we invest? Number one, we should invest in processing. If I had to tell you where there's the biggest need to address, Teju, the question around post-harvest losses, 40 to 60% of our fruits and vegetables go to waste, 20 to 30% of our grains and tubers. We're all enjoying yam, boiled yam and roasted yam, and we're all, now that it's been harvested, or corn. And in a few months, fresh corn would have disappeared and yam would be double the price. And that's just because we don't have a processing industry. So in terms of where to invest, there are ample opportunities to invest across the value chain. And there's quite a bit of money entering the ecosystem. I put a link to a website we created. It was called nourishingafrica.com. We've recently changed the name to Africa Food Change Makers, afchub.com.org. And why we did that is because many people, they don't see themselves as change makers. If you're an entrepreneur in this ecosystem, you are a change maker, you are a champion. And we need you to recognize that. We need the financing community to recognize that. This means that our traditional financing communities, our banks, need to change the way they've been funding. They fund manufacturing differently from how they fund the food ecosystem. Ultimately, food production is manufacturing. Fund the food ecosystem the way you fund a manufacturer or anything else. Understand not only the source of supply, which is the production part where the farmers fit in, that's a supply chain issue. We can solve for it if we have the demand side. And I think if we switch the way we finance food, it becomes a different paradigm. We also need more patient and catalytic capital. And this is where VC and PE and a lot of other angels have a role to play. And then we need a long-term investment in infrastructure. And this is where the Afrexim, the AFCs come in. And we don't see that investment coming into infrastructure, especially in our rural areas. And tell you, this supply chain challenge continues to limit everybody in the ecosystem because the cost of transportation is too high. So we need this large infrastructure funding that is catalytic and patience to come in. And I think we need to share a lot more data about the sector. We need to celebrate the success stories. We need to amplify the success stories so that we start changing the narrative that it's hard to fund the food ecosystem, that you can't make money, and that you can't see returns. Because there are people who are seeing returns, double-digit returns, triple-digit returns. And in this country, we're still seeing that happen today. And I actually tell people this is a good time to invest in agriculture and food, because there's such a need and because imported food is too expensive for the average Nigerian. This is a good time to say whatever we've been importing that we can source locally and produce locally, please do it. As some of you know, I am the co-founder of Ace Foods, which is an agro-processing company. We make spices and complementary food. And I can tell you that we have seen an upsurge in demand, because before people would say, oh, made in Nigeria, let me buy the imported spices. Now they're looking for made in Nigeria because our spices are half the price of imported spices. And that's just one example. And we're seeing that growth trajectory for every food company in Nigeria. I happen to sit on many other boards and I'm involved in quite a few. So this is a good time to invest. You can see quick wins, but you have to invest with the right partners. You have to do your due diligence and you have to collaborate across the sector. Thank you.
Thank you again. Professor Sani, back to you again. So indeed, we kind of get it that people may not understand how food can actually fuel the insecurities in other parts of Nigeria. How, you know, when it comes to insecurity, we're talking economic livelihoods, we're talking about food security. And there's a belief that Nigeria can really be the breadbasket of not just Africa, but I think eventually across the world. What do you think are those greatest challenges to Nigeria meeting this? I know you've spoken about leadership and we've spoken about capital today. What other things do you think are limiting us? Some arguments around preserving the environment, farming the environment. What do you think are other things that, how do we balance all this competing interests to make sure that we can actually achieve our, the possibilities from a Nigerian perspective? Thank you.
Well, Nigeria is a very good country. We have the abundant natural resources, and we also have the experience when it comes to food ecosystems, like Ndidi said, and we have practicalized it. There was a period in around 2003, I did a survey for IITA in West African coast. You cannot believe it, that Firo technology was in Togo, Ghana. So number one thing we need to do is to go back to our regional strengths. The North is cattle. The South, two apart. The cash crop is more from Ondo straight to the South. Then you have all these arable crops from Osun straight before you get to Lagos, and Lagos is the market hub. That's number one strength we can do. And I think some initiatives are coming on board through the AFTA and the African Bank on the agro-processing zones. That may get us, and we may be lucky if we get it right this time. That's one. That's the second one. The third one is access to capital. Sorbitol plant that Yemisi Olóyè in Salty Starch just commissioned 2 months ago cost nothing less than 4 billion naira. And the window was from CBN and some other banks. And it took us 4 years to be able to commission that kind of a plant because of COVID. I'm letting you know the extent, and that is the largest sorbitol plant now in Africa and second largest in the whole world. The first one is in Indonesia. So for you to set up an industry that will feed 200, 500 million Nigerians, you will need capital. Now, the solution there is for us to go back to what we had in those days. Why do we have Unity Bank? Why do we have all these banks that are in the hinterland? Bank of Agagu is dead now. It's not functional. And so we need to strengthen our banks and let people have access to capital. And the last one is capacity building. Some of us, myself, Ndidi, Philip, cannot be talking if we have not had opportunity of moving around the globe and learning and relearning. The capacity building is very important. There are quite a lot of innovations, even indigenous, that we are not harnessing in the country. So, and that is an area where I think Nigeria can come back to take our leadership position. Thank you.
Thank you again. Because we're running out of time, just so that as we begin to round up, one of the things that we would say, one of the things that I would really like the panelists to address as we go through this last round is the issue around creating, agriculture today is one of the biggest employer of labor, but we're seeing an aging population doing the upstream. How do we encourage the young people to stay on the farms without having to migrate to the more urban areas for whatever reason? How do we sell this business, the entire value chain, to them as an opportunity, and they don't have to be in the city to do that? Can I start with you, Mr. Phillips, and with your closing thoughts as well as you address this? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think the first thing is to let them awareness, right? I think when there's an awareness of the different opportunities across the food value chain, then that's where it starts from. because it's when you are aware that you can innovatively introduce some solutions that can engage more youth, right? Two is capital. We've heard that several times, right? Capital is important from the right providers, like Ms. Ndidi also said. It has to be patient. It has to be towards, it has to come from the right partners or providers of these funds. So those are two major ones that solutions that can get more youth involved. One is awareness, to know that it doesn't have to be you actually working on the farmland. That's also very important because you have to produce. But there's some other areas along the food business that's like processing, that all you need to do is understand what this can be processed into. Are there implements or locally crafted machineries that can be used to process, right? And can you work as a group to get this done, and having obviously accessing the right capital to be able to bring this alive. And I thank you very much again once more for the opportunity to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Sani.
Yeah, plus what my colleague has said, there are some good success stories in agribusiness in Nigeria by youth that we need to document and showcase. Myself, Ndidi, can work with the foundation on that. The second one that will encourage the youth is this issue of e-markets. The issue of electronic marketing system is coming in. The use of drone in agricultural production is coming in. So we have some, and once they see it, and the last one is the credit. Like now, some people are accessing credit. And that if all of us can work together to make sure that the financial institutions give available credit at the right time, many youth, I'm very sure, will come into agribusiness. The last point is that whatever we do, we should remember that Nigeria is an agrarian country. We have the experience. Our great fathers, they've done it before, and we can also do it. Thank you very much.
And Ndidi, please go ahead.
Thank you so much again for this opportunity to be on such a distinguished panel. I would say there are three things. Number one, we have to revamp our curriculum. Professor Sani knows we've been working on this for many years through the Sahel Scholars Program. We recognize that our curriculum is stuck in the 1970s. Most students who are studying agriculture don't understand that it's a business, it's a money-making venture, and they don't actually have the practical skills to start and grow businesses in the sector. So we need to revamp our curriculum. If this is something the foundation can take on, even in your priority state, it will be welcome. The second thing is that we need to provide practical internship opportunities for our young people. Every year we have Sahel scholars come and have internships, and it blows their mind that you can do well and do good. They are no longer ashamed to say they study agriculture. It's no longer their fourth choice option. They see a future. Most students who study agriculture in Nigeria couldn't get into medicine or pharmacy or even microbiology. They tell you it's their fourth choice option. And so their professors say the same thing. The passion you see with Professor Sani is not reflected in our faculty. Our faculty need training, retraining, exposure, and support. And then we need, beyond the curriculum and internships, we need mentoring. We need to showcase more success stories. And we need to make people see that you can make money in this industry, you can do well and do good, and that you can leave a legacy of impact. Our country is naturally endowed for agricultural excellence. This is one industry that can create jobs and create wealth faster than tech, faster than any other industry. And we need to step into that promise and embrace it in ways like never before. I'm committed and I'm willing to donate about 20 of my books to the foundation. My book is called Food Entrepreneurs in Africa, Scaling Resilient Agriculture Businesses. And I'll be happy to partner with you guys to see how we can get this into the hands of more students. God bless you all.
Again, to the panelists, to the audience, thank you again. We saw your questions and I tried to take them through during the conversation. As we wrap this session up, I would just add to this that for me, one of the things I've seen really happen in Africa is being in Ethiopia and agriculture. And what they've done in the Oromia region in 3 years, with consistency in leadership, as mentioned, with transformative leadership, commitment and grit. In 3 years, they started to export wheat, and they took opportunity of the war that happened in Ukraine. So there's a lot Nigeria can do. I agree with everything the panelist has done. And the idea is we hope that working with the foundation, there'll be a lot more we can drive to ensure food security, employment opportunities, and improved economic livelihoods across Nigeria. Thank you for listening, and thank you so much for being a part of this to the panelists and every member of the audience. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Teju. Thank you so much, Mr. Sani. Thank you so much, Mr. Akindele Phillips, Ms. Ndidi Wuneli. We thank you so much. This has been an engaging session. One of the comments says that this should be a masterclass. I completely agree. This really felt like a masterclass, and there's so much that we have learned from here. We can anticipate a lot of policy papers would come out of this, I am sure about that. So thank you so much once again to all of our participants. We see your question. We're pressed for time, and so we aren't able to take all of the questions, but please leave your questions in the question and answer box, because they would contribute to our final synthesis for today's event. So thank you so much. I'd like to quickly invite Ms. Omolmi Akinsanya. I'm sure she's here. Is Omolmi here?
Yes, she is. Good afternoon,
Hi.
everyone. Hi, Evelyn.
You have the floor now.
Thank you, our Master of Ceremony.
Thank you.
I just want to say, on behalf of the family, we just want to say a big thank you. First of all, to His Excellency, the President. I don't know if he's still with us. We just want to say a big thank you. The keynote was amazing. You know, one thing that was a key takeaway for me was Africa has options. I think that's one thing that we don't talk about enough. We normally feel like we're the little brother or little sister when it comes to, you know, talking about this sort of things, but Africa has options, and Nigeria definitely has options. So if there's anything that I'm taking away today, it's definitely that. Also want to thank Professor Koroma. Thank you for, you know, talking about finance and the role of finance. And one thing, even though not too related to finance that he had mentioned, was tomorrow's leaders need to build on what yesterday's leaders have done. And that's something that even, you know, Professor Sani also spoke about, and how we shouldn't discount what has been done yesterday, but we should continue to build on it, and hopefully we will get to the Nigeria of our dreams. Also want to thank our distinguished panelists, from Ms. Inueli to Akindele Phillips, and also Professor Sani. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you also for your generous donations. The books, the time, you know, wanting to work with the foundation. You know, food security wasn't one of the things that we concentrate on, but it's part of governance. And so we welcome this. It's a welcome development for us, and we look forward to doing even better with regards to this. I want to thank our distinguished audience, our participants. Thank you so much for everything that you've done over the last 9 years. We appreciate you coming online, coming in person. Looking forward to seeing you all next year when we do 10 years. Thank you to our moderator of ISI. Thank you, Teju. Thank you for doing this. This was, the panel discussion was, you know, was enlightening, and I think it gave a different flavor to this lecture series this year. We also want to thank the board. Thank you to our chairman, Dr. Adeleke. And thank you to everyone that is present and those who are not as well. So Uncle Kayode Falowa is here, Auntie Sholakwe is here, my uncle, Uncle Femi Agagu is here, Chief Akinyelure is here, Uncle Akin Aruwajiri is here, Dr. Aliu is here, Uncle Kashin Imam is here. So everybody is here, and we thank you for your support. Without you, we would not be where we are today. And on behalf of the Agagu family, we just want to say thank you. Thank you all so much for making this year a success. We also would like to thank our mom, the one who continues to be the link to it all. Thank you so much, Mama. And we really do hope that we all leave this year wanting to leave things better than we we've get them. Please remember to donate. We've been getting a lot of alerts and pings. We want to thank you for that, and we're looking forward to more donations. Do have a pleasant rest of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mommy. Thank you so much, everyone. We have had such an exciting and, in my opinion, successful 9th annual Memorial Lecture. From here in Abuja, I want to say very big thank you to everyone who gave their time, their contribution, their support, and even their prayers. Thank you so much as you continue to share about the lecture on your social media platforms. Please follow at the Agagu Foundation so that you can access resources from the lecture even after the lecture. We will be putting out a press release and some other resources that you will find useful. And I just want to re-emphasize supporting the foundation. It's very important and it's never too late to show your support. So please remember that the Agagu Foundation and the reason we're here today is to actualize the personal credo of the late patriarch, Dr. Olusegun Agagu, who has always worked to leave things better than he met them. And I agree that I'm leaving this lecture today better than I arrived at 4 p.m. I'm a lot better now. Thank you so much to everyone for your intelligent contribution. You can find a niche and grow in there, even if it's not something that is your key focus. The foundation works in different facet areas, including academia, geology, petroleum engineering, energy, politics, good governance, culture and arts. There is high life music, service, aviation, trauma. So feel free to donate and support the OAF Foundation. I also want to say a big thank you to my colleagues at Baobab Consulting who worked behind the scene to support comms for this event. Thank you so much, Dami. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Liz Grossman and Sean. Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry if I skipped out any acknowledgements. Thank you so much and God bless you.